On set. Stephen, good day to you. Let's
Hello,
start
sir.
in Japan, which is facing some stark economic news.
It certainly is. The new figures have shown the country's gone back into recession in the third quarter of this year. The Japanese economy shrunk unexpectedly by 1.6% in the 3 months to the end of September. The government also said that in the previous 3 months, GDP had plunged by 7.3%. The news adds to pressure on the Japanese government over its economic policies, as Catherine Clifford now reports.
A surprise slide into recession for the world's third largest economy. It comes after a tax hike back in April from 5 to 8%. This led housing and business investment to decline and consumer spending to slow. Now the government's likely to delay implementing another sales tax rise planned for October 2015.
Upon making a decision on tax hike, we need to be careful not to slow down the economic recovery. What's most important is not to let it go back to deflation.
After a sharp drop of 7.3% in annual GDP growth in the April to June quarter, the 1.6% drop for this following quarter pushed the country into recession. It was a shock to many economists.
We were actually hoping for about 2% annualized growth during the fall quarter, which would have been very important to show that the economy is not just bottoming out. This negative number is clearly a disappointment and shows that the economy takes much longer to recover than we were hoping for.
Japan emerged from its last recession in 2012 and saw relatively strong growth in 2013. However, surging company profits haven't translated into higher workers' wages. And critics say Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has failed to deliver on promises for drastic reforms of labour regulations and the tax system.
This latest news could have big political consequences in Japan too. Earlier we spoke to our correspondent in Tokyo, Justin McCurry.
He has a very big week ahead of him. As we speak, I think he's on his way back from the G20 summit in Brisbane. But what he's expected to do later this week is, first of all, to address this tax issue. He'll probably postpone the second part of that tax rise and focus instead on promoting growth. And in order to win public support for that policy, because he does have opposition within his own party, he's likely to call a snap election, probably this week, with the voting to take place sometime in the middle of next month.
All right, business news coming out of China. There's been a major development for investors there.
As of today, a new link between the Hong Kong and Shanghai stock exchanges comes into effect. The Stock Connect scheme means it'll be easier for foreign investors to put their money into Chinese companies. Now, it does so by allowing stocks to be bought on opposite exchanges. The first day's already seen huge interest from investors. The daily limit of $2.1 billion was reached just before 2 p.m. Hong Kong time.
And how are the markets taking that news?
Well, interestingly, both Hong Kong and China had opened up on news of this new stock market link coming into place, but they had fallen back later in trading. Both of the exchanges down pretty significantly. Well, Hong Kong anyway, so you're seeing it down almost 1% there. But the big mover on the Asian markets was the Nikkei in Tokyo. That closed down almost 3% on the news that Japan had gone back into recession. The yen too falling against the dollar to a 7-year low. Now that effect has spilled over into the European trading day, which has just begun here. All the markets in Europe opening in the red, except for the London FTSE 100, which has opened up by 0.4%. Wasn't expecting that. The global pharmaceutical firm Pfizer has announced an alliance deal with Germany's Merck in the area of immuno-oncology. Shares in Merck up over 4% in Frankfurt on that news, but Pfizer has revised down its earnings forecast because of that. We'll see how their shares react when they open on Wall Street later.
You're very strong on your immuno-oncology.
Yes, thank you. We'll move on now to look at some of the day's other business stories. And Australia has signed a trade deal with China that will remove tariffs for more than 90% of its exports to the country. Prime Minister Tony Abbott said the deal would add billions to the Australian economy. The deal comes out after almost 10 years of talks with Beijing. It'll particularly benefit Australia's agriculture and mining industries. The Botox maker Allergan is said to be close to buying the pharmaceutical company Actavis. Reports say the deal could be worth up to $65 billion. It would also help Allergan to fend off a potential takeover by the Canadian firm Valiant. And Japan's Toray Industries has signed an $8.6 billion deal to supply carbon fibre to Boeing. The material will be used in the 777X and 787 Dreamliner models. The news sent shares in Toray soaring by more than 4%.
All right, and that wraps up business news with Stephen Carroll. Thank you very much. Stay on set. We're going to turn now to Oliver Fowry with a review of the international press. I believe you have a major scoop on chocolate. We'll leave that till later. Let's start first.